Good afternoon, esteemed guests, and welcome to the Illumination for our Insights lecture series today. We welcome back Danielle Barnett, telling you all about herself and her achievements within the entertainment industry. Please welcome Danielle Barnett.
1, 2. I am so blown away to see you lovely, lovely people. Thank you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart for joining me today, because everyone doesn't really know who I am, probably. And if you do know who I am, if you don't know who I am, it's going to be an education. You know, we learn every day. I sure learn every day. I totally learn every day. Has everyone been to my last talks? Good, good. Has anyone not been to my last talks and thinking, who's this nutter? Yes, hello. Nice to meet you. So, because it's my life story, I don't have many notes, so I can sort of like move around a bit more. So this is good. Well, bonjour. Bonjour, mademoiselle. Nice to see your face. Okay, I'm going to start, because I won't explain what I am or who I am, because you're going to hear it in a minute. So, this is a little bit of what makes me who I am and what I've done and what brings me to this day right here now. So when I was 3, I had a white knuckle ride I will never forget. I was really lucky because my dad was a lawyer, he's now retired, but we used to travel America a lot because he had a lot of work over in America. So he used to take us with, and I visited so many of the states. It was just it was blessed. But one day we went on the rapids, you know the rapids in America? You get all different rapids rides. We all got on a raft. I was 3 years old, my mum and dad, me and my sister. And we were told that the rapids were absolutely fine, that it would be safe. Well, halfway down the rapids, the raft overturned. So I will never forget, I was under the surface of the water, and I remember trying to grasp up to the air, to get to the air. And I'll never forget that feeling of desperation and what's going on here? But obviously I did get to the surface because I'm here. And my dad ended up one side with me, my mum ended up the other side with my sister. We managed to get together eventually, and because it'd been raining so much, and that's why the rapids had got so dangerous. But everything I've been through in life, I relate back to that minute, because it was a time that I thought I would never survive, even at that young age. But I did, and it makes you stronger, right? Everything we go through makes us stronger. So this is me, and that's me hiding at the back of the crowd. So I was really, really bullied at school, like seriously bullied, right from primary school, right through to being asked to leave at secondary school. I was 15 stone when I was 15, which must be about 250 kilos, so probably around that. I'm not very good with the kilos because the pounds and all that. But I was a bigger child, and I never really had any friends. So I kind of developed my personality on if I was laughing at myself, then no one else could laugh at me. So I really, really kind of just got my personality from those early days. But it made me really driven and resilient. And I used to be sort of like front and centre, because then no one else could laugh at me because I was laughing at myself first. So all the way through school, after being asked to leave, I had absolutely no crowd that I fitted in. Then finally, around 17 years old, I went and discovered nightclubbing, because of course I was 18, but I'd kind of just got away with it. So I remember walking into a nightclub one day, and I finally found a group of friends that I'd fitted in with. I just loved the atmosphere, I loved the lights, I loved the music, the people, I just loved everything about clubbing. And I walked into this nightclub, and there was a woman on the stage, and she was singing a song that it was just all over the radios, and I recognised the song more than I recognised her. But I just got mesmerised by this beautiful woman with this big feather boa, and I stood there just looking at her going, I want to be you, just want to be you. So her name was Victoria Newton. She sang a song called You Sure Do, which was a big 90s hit. And now I am swimming, even though it's swimming upstream in a lot of ways, but it has been a journey, and it's allowed me to travel all over the world and meet some incredible people. That was a gig that I did in Dubai not so long ago, and travelling around with my 90s artist that I just went, oh my gosh, I love this song too, you know. So just travelling around with all these different people. But how did I get there? So I left school with a burning ambition, or should I say, as I said, I got asked to leave, because you get asked to leave from private school, you don't get expelled. But I was a naughty girl, I know. I put my poor parents through everything. So I left school with a burning ambition. I spent 5 years in my parents' bedroom upstairs, me and my best friend, and almost like a brother, his name was Dave, and I'll introduce you to him now. But we spent 5 years songwriting, and we had this little tiny 4-track tape recorder, and we used to record on this thing and get sent off, because it was all cassette tapes in those days, send off for the cassette tapes. We kept getting rejection after rejection. And then we carried on writing. Then we upgraded into my dad's steam room in the garden. And we covered, my poor dad, honestly, we covered all the walls with egg boxes, because apparently that was good for the acoustic conditioning. Nah, because my neighbours got free concerts every night. I say they're lucky. But we upgraded to that. So we kept on writing, sending off rejection after rejection, coming back, and that pang in the stomach when you get that rejection, that never leaves you. But then the resilience you get to get back up and keep going, like, I'm not going to let this get me down, I'm going to learn from this, reinventing it more and more and more. So I knew nobody when I first started in this industry. My dad was a lawyer, as I said before, my mum was a teacher. Nobody was in the music industry. It was just a burning passion and a vision that I had of what I wanted to be. So I started making loads of phone calls, because all I had was my personality and these absolutely awful cassette tapes. But I was not going to let that stop me. So I just phoned people, and everybody started to know who I was. All the little record labels, the top people in these record labels knew my name. They liked me as well. So it was like a little step forward. And what was the most amazing thing is that some of the smaller labels now, they went on to even bigger things. So one of my friends that I met early on in the days, when I was phoning everybody, actually became like one of the head people at EMI and now at Warner Music, and he looks after Kate Bush, Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. Like, amazing job. And I went to a private Robbie Williams concert as well with him. So he just went on to big things. So I am pretty much, hopefully, I treat everyone how I want to be treated myself. I just, hopefully I'm nice to everyone. But I think people appreciate that too, because I tend to meet lots of nice people. So another person I met at the time was called Steve Long, and he was an A&R guy at a company called Pulsate Records in the UK. He managed a lady called Alicia Dixon. So anyone from the UK, is anyone from the UK here? Yeah, you know Alicia Dixon, right? Okay, so anyone from America, Alicia Dixon's kind of like on America's Got Talent, one of the judges. That, you know, she's quite well known nowadays. But in those days, she was in a girl band called Mystique. So they were doing quite well in the UK charts. So he used to look after them in the record label. And he, who was a very good friend of mine at this point, was also very good friends with Simon Cowell. I'd never met him yet. So we actually went on to manage a couple of acts together, including a band called Freefaller that I'll talk about later. But that's how I met Steve Long. So my main aim was I had to get a demo, because my demos were not cutting it. But it was £400 to spend a day in a London recording studio. So we saved up, me and Dave, saved up, finally got enough money to go to London recording studio. And we went in there and we recorded 3 tracks. So that was with the £400. We got it on CD, which was a massive step up. And it allowed me, with this CD, to go out and get an agent. And my first ever agent actually ran Capital FM, which is a big radio station in the UK and a big network of radio stations too. And they used to run different club nights in clubs. So I got my first ever gig from this agent, from my CD, and it was at the Hippodrome in London back in the day. And this Hippodrome in London was a really well-established nightclub and very prestigious to be able to go there. And I remember there was 3,000 people in this nightclub. I was just about to go on stage. I was petrified. I'd never done anything like this before. the stage comes up out of the ground. So I remember just taking a deep breath, relating myself back to it. If I'm underwater, I'm going to come back to the top. It's going to be okay, you know. Went on that stage, petrified, knees were knocking like this, you can imagine. Started doing my gig. It was absolutely brilliant. Everyone went mad, and I just knew at that point, I really enjoyed that, so I'm in the right place. So that was my first ever gig. So I started to send out my demo to more and more people, and I managed to get a first record deal. And it was with a company called Rumour Records, a subsidiary called Clone, and I released a few singles that did really quite well, especially on the gay scene over in England. So I started doing my own gigs. So this was a top 5 chart single with them. So it was number 4, Bittersweet Symphony, The Drugs Don't Work. So these were cover versions and high energy cover versions of songs that were already out. But it allowed me to get my name at the time out there and to be able to gig in my own name. So I was getting paid really quite well in those days. But I'm a songwriter, and my first ever publishing deal was actually at 13 years old in Las Vegas. When I used to go over to Vegas, I got my first ever publishing deal. So my insides just wanted to sort of like tell my story. But these were cover versions, but it was okay. It was a non-exclusive deal with Clone, and that allowed me to go and do my own music with other people. So I went on to get a production deal with a company called The Next Room, TNR. They were up and coming, really good producers. They were just very slow. So we went into the studio, we started recording, and it was really, really good music that we're coming out with, but so slow. And all I wanted to do in those days was to be that woman on stage with the big feather boa. I wanted to be on stage where everybody knew what I was singing, and they just recognised me through that song. So about a year into my production deal, I got a phone call from Steve Long, who I've introduced to you before. And he said, Simon Cowell is looking for someone to front a big summer song that he's releasing through RCA Records. Would you be interested in doing it? At this point, I was like, I will sing anything. Okay, yes, I'll do it. I'll meet Simon Cowell. And I was petrified. So I was 23 years old, absolutely like, I'm going to meet Simon Cowell. We drove up in London, went in through RCA Records, went right up to the top floor in the elevators, walked down the corridor, and everybody's sitting at their desks on their computers, and they're all like looking at you like this, and I'm wearing a nice sexy dress, and I was like probably about size 8 or something silly, and thinking, you know, we always think that we're bigger than we are, because, you know, women, eh? It's what we do sometimes. I don't care so much now, but, you know, back in those days. So I'm walking along, we get to the very back office, open the door, it's windows, massive windows overlooking London. Simon Cowell sitting at his desk. I walked in, all over the walls were these gold discs of Robson and Jerome, which some of you will know, some of you won't. Sunita, no Sunita yet? Teletubbies? There we go, we know that one. He won't admit to that. So they're all over the wall, and Simon Cowell's sitting behind his desk, and he's looking me up and down like this. I'm like petrified, and he goes, yeah, she'll do. I was like, don't you want to hear me sing? Steve Long's standing. He goes, no, you've been introduced to Steve. Do you want to be signed to RCA Records? Well, yeah, okay, I'll sing. I'll do it. I didn't know what I was singing. Just put me down. So that started my journey. And I recorded a summer song that you'll hear very shortly. I started touring everywhere, because this was with a big company behind me now. RCA was really behind me. There was gigs, there was press, there was TV. And in the UK, there was a big MTV kind of like station called The Box. And they were playlisting our record all over the time. GMTV, which is a big morning TV television show back in the day, they were playing our song as the song of the summer. So every morning it was played for about 3 months on the lead up to summer. You will like this, you will like this. And it was just getting into people's heads. It was absolutely incredible. So I was getting press with industry press. it was just amazing, honestly, because I'd read this press, you know, growing up, and this was my first ever pop video.
In the place. This is
It's just a summer song, and it was around the time of Macarena. You'll see me in a minute. That's me. Go back to the Macarena kind of bit. So it was just fun, just a summer song, but it was getting me exactly what I wanted to do, which is to be known. So as I said, I was in More magazine, and in those days I was reading More magazine, and I had a double-page spread. It was so weird to get everything that I wanted. All these big gigs I was doing, people singing the song back at me. They knew exactly who I was. It was amazing. So the people behind Grand Fiesta, which was the name of the band that we put Ritmo della Noche, was Steve Long, obviously, Rowan Heath, who was the producer of Ritmo della Noche, Simon Cowell, RCA Records, and Diane Charlemagne, who was the backing singer on my record. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Rowan Heath is also the producer and the writer of Urban Cookie Collective. And Diane Charlemagne, God rest her soul, who was incredible, was also the lead singer for Urban Cookie Collective back in the day. So Ritmo was getting rave reviews. It was climbing the charts and tipped to go #1. This was a week before the release. It was the pop tip charts, #2 in the pop tip charts. Now, we had the National Lottery booked, and the National Lottery was the biggest TV show in the UK with 15 million viewers. Back in the days where there was no satellite, there was no extra channels to look at, it was just channel 1, 2 and 3, I think, in those days as well. So we had that coming up. But on the Saturday night, that was Grand Fiesta and Ben's Kingsley. This was in the newspaper. I knew that my whole life was going to change. So that Friday night, just before I was meant to be on the National Lottery, we went to the Hippodrome again in London, as you do, had a good night out, myself and my friend, came back about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting at my parents' table, having a cup of tea before I went to bed, turned the telly on, and there was something that completely was going to change my life, and it was this. Yeah, absolutely. All over the TV screens that Saturday night was Princess Diana had sadly been killed, and I just I sat there, and I remember looking at it, and I didn't realise the gravity of it. Obviously I knew how loved she was, and she was an incredible woman, who I loved very much myself, but I didn't realise how much it would affect my life. And on the Monday morning, I got a phone call from Steve Long, not even Simon Cowell, he didn't even bother phoning me, and Steve said, the whole country is in mourning, and not only the whole country, the whole world is in mourning. You've got a summer record, RCA are shelving the record. And I'd spent a year working this record up. And I was devastated. I lost the National Lottery. Obviously, they pulled the record. And Elton John, with the candle in the wind back in those days, he took my slot on the National Lottery, and I was left. I never felt so alone. I never felt so worthless and useless, and it just floored me. So I thought to myself, okay, I never want to feel like this again. Oh, never want to feel like this again. And I never want anyone I ever work with to feel like this, because it was the worst. So I thought, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start again, and I'm going to become a manager, because I knew people, I'd made connections, And I thought, I am not singing anymore, I'm done with that. I'm going to put a different hat on. And I was good at what I did. So I started managing a band, and they were called Point Break. I don't go into this too much, but they did really, really well all over the world. We had a #1 album in Asia. We travelled to Australia. We had a big hit with Stan Tough over there, and they played Aussie Rules as well. The Aussie Rules, any Australians in the crowd? Yeah, Aussie Rules. So this is going back a few years now. I know I didn't like I'm Just Born, but you know, going back a few years. So we had Aussie Rules, and it was just brilliant. We had top 10 singles, top 10 album. It was just brilliant. And our A&R guy from Warner Records actually offered me a record deal at that time as well, because I was the writer for a lot of the music. But I had my management hat on. I was like, no, not interested, done with all that, you know. I'm just concentrating on the management. So this is a little bit of what Point Break achieved. They were boys, and they were in Biker Grove, which is a big TV show in the UK, and they were in it with Anton Deck, that you may have heard of. So we had 5 singles out with them, and an album called Apocadelic. The first single was called Do We Rock, filmed in the UK, in a big sugar mill in London. This was You, a song called You, and it was filmed in New York. Amazing, with the Twin Towers in the background, incredible. That's Ollie, that's Brett, and that's Deck. And we had Freaky Time, that was filmed in Cornwall. What About Us? And that was filmed in Finland. And it was an amazing, amazing time. Were my family, and I spent all my energy and my time into just promoting and channeling them, and I just wanted them to do really well, and like they were my family. And in fact, Ollie became my brother-in-law, so he really did become family. So that's how close we were. But Rowan, at the same time, whilst I was doing Point Break, I had about a year into Point Break, I had a phone call from Rowan saying Diane Charlemagne, the incredible singer, has left the group, and we're looking for a new front singer. Would you like to be the new singer for Urban Cookie Collective? Now the thing was, I was so hurt by what I'd been through, but internally I am a performer and I love people and I love what I do anyway. So I was like, do you know what, I'm going to do it because it's less pressure and everyone knows the song, so I'm going to do it. So I managed to do it, and this is the kind of gigs that I do, but I do massive gigs. So this is the key, the secret. Not shy. It's called The Key, The Secret. Do you know this? Do you recognise that one? Yay! I did it for 23 years. I know. I actually left in October last year, so it was really a big thing for me to leave the band, but I'm actually going into something even more exciting, which is another #1 90s act, and it was called The Tampera. The band was called The Tampera, but the song called Feel It was #1 for a lot, so I'm actually transitioning into that band. So this is exclusive right here, that you know about this now, so you can now have a little listen to The Tampera, Feel It, and you'll kind of realise what I'm going into. So it wasn't financially viable for me to carry on with Urban Cookie Collective, but it did give me the opportunity to tour and see some incredible places and to really learn my craft and to just love what I do and just experience every experience in life that I just think that's what life's all about. So I've toured with some incredible people, done some amazing gigs. I've travelled the world to Ibiza. I've been in a foam party in Ibiza where I'm on top of a podium and all around me is like a sea of white foam. It's been incredible. Edinburgh Hogmanay, where there was 100,000 people lining the streets and people hanging off balconies and just like climbing lampposts to see with Radio 1. Unbelievable gigs. Trafalgar Square, where we live, the hometown, is just an amazing sight to see, so full of people. And I do massive gigs still to this day. I've got a gig in June actually in Ireland at a big arena tour that I do. So with 20,000 people. So this is the kind of gigs that I do. That picture just blows my mind every time. So that was me on stage out there with Peter Andre as well. So I support a lot of the other 90s acts. So Point Break at this time had finished. Urban Cookie was still going on. Deck had left because he didn't want to be in Point Break anymore. But Ollie, my brother-in-law, the one at the front, the blonde guy, he still wanted to be in a band. So we decided to put another band called Freefaller together, and it was born. We had 3 top 20 hits, 1 top 5 single with Do This, Do That. So it was a bit like Busted. I don't know if you have that in America or Australia or other countries. But they were a live band. That's Ollie.
Do this, do that, get yourself a job, get yourself a wife, get a life, don't become a slob. Read this, read that, educate your brain. Don't need no advice, it's my life, just turn up the game. Right to Marshall M, to volume 10, the neighbors coming round, screaming again. You say they're not enough, we're running out of luck. I can see your blue light flashing. I want something wild, wreck my life if I want to, never break me down. I want something more, never break me, never gonna break me. It's my life, I live it how I like, never gonna break me down.
So it was that kids thing, it was fun. It was just one of those things that everybody started singing and knowing. They were a live band, so we started touring all the big road shows in the UK. So one of the gigs we did was a big gig in Wales for Red Dragon FM. It spent a lot of time touring. They wanted to play live. So what happens at these big gigs is you go on stage, plugging in after the other artists, and you just play. You don't get time for sound check. So something happened in front of 20,000 people. I was at the side of stage. Dave, who I talked about earlier, which is kind of like my brother, but he was techie, he was brilliant. He was in the middle of the crowd somewhere in the sound tent. They went on stage, they played their instruments, used the cables thousands of times, plugged in, went to play the first chord, and in front of 20,000 people, out blares a radio station. I was like, what is going on here? Everyone's looking like, what the hell? Everything's been turned off. Some just didn't understand what was going on. And then what happened was that they realised it was the guitarist's cable, who he'd played with loads and loads of times, but it was acting as an aerial. There'd been capacitance and it was picking up a radio signal. So the cable was then changed and they did the gig. And they came off stage and it made us start thinking. So you do all the checks and you use all the equipment. We rely on the cables. And we didn't want to buy a wireless unit because they also have inherent problems with sound and pickups and stuff. So we thought, okay, so how do we get around this problem? Let's try and buy an optical guitar cable, as you do. So we started researching. You can buy one. So Dave, being the technical genius that he was, goes, I'm going to make one. I'm like, you're all right. He goes, no, I'm going to make one. Okay. So my house turned into a lab. I had equipment everywhere. Spare room had circuit boards all over the floor, solder, magnifying glasses. You can imagine the equipment that was just all over the house. There was solder even in the dog, right? I'm not joking. I was wiping my feet on the way out, just full of this stuff for 6 months. And then 6 months, I was sitting in the front room. Dave comes in with a puzzled look on his face, and he had an earphone in his ear and a guitar over him, but none of us could play guitar. That was the irony of it. It was really bizarre. He comes in and goes, I think I've done it. I went, really? He goes, I think I've done it. Put it in my ear. He played the guitar. I was like, Dave, you have done it. But what do we do now? He'd created the world's first analogue optical guitar cable. We had no background in manufacture, we had no background in that kind of industry. All we knew was the music industry. So I thought, okay, so we tried to get it out there, and we started getting big music journalists interested in it, and it was Guitarist magazine, and we ended up travelling to NAMM in California to the big shows, and everyone was really interested in it. So we got, eventually, let's go to get a patent done, which was another story in itself. We ended up with 2 patents granted, one in America and one in the UK as well, so they were granted on our light lead and trademarks. That was the world's first analogue optical light lead. I had a phone call from Coldplay's manager and producer, and he said, we'd like to try the light lead out. So we drove down into London. I met with Rick Simpson, who was Coldplay's 5th member, that's what they call him. He's done all the albums with them. He tested it out and he was blown away. He said, can I keep it and let Coldplay use it? Yeah, okay. So he tweeted out for us, so Ask Audio Mag was how he got through to us. He said, my pleasure, the light lead is a thing of wonder. Johnny was excited that his guitar signal was made out of light. And so the Rick Simpson, his Grammy Award-winning producer, he used the light lead to record Coldplay's the other album, A Head Full of Dreams. Absolutely amazing, blows my mind every time. So we knew that the industry knew about it, but the public didn't know anything about what we were doing. So I thought, what's the best way of getting it out to the public? Dragon's Den, of course. What else do you do? TV. So I thought, okay, so we applied to Dragon's Den. I was a cruise ship speaking in Singapore at the time, and I got a phone call from the BBC, and they said, we'd like you to come to audition for Dragon's Den. I was like, okay, well, like, I'd never done an audition, I'd never done a pitch, I'd never done anything like that, and I was with Dave at the time, and I looked at him and I said, yeah, we'll do it. So we flew back to London after the cruise, went on the Wednesday to go and see the producers, and we sat at the table, we gave this pitch, they liked it, then we went on to a second pitch with bigger producers, and then the third pitch with bigger producers, and then you have to do due diligence, which is like every single thing that you say you have to prove, because the BBC are very, very, they have to be sure that everything is exactly correct. So we did all of this due diligence, and the long and the short of it is, yep, you've got a Dragon's Den. So we drove to Manchester, we had to be ready at 5 o'clock in the morning, got to Dragon's Den, they mic you all up, you're half asleep because you feel like, well, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? You feel rough. But we were the first ones on, and I remember we travelled around, we were walking around, they film everything, and you've got mics on so they hear everything, and you go to different areas and they film you talking amongst yourselves. So me and Dave are just talking, you get the water and you look at the pictures along the wall. It's probably the same as Shark Tank, that kind of format, you know, because it's the same setup. So, and then you go to the elevator, which may or may not be an elevator. I'm not allowed to say, but it could or could not be an elevator. And then we walked through the elevator, you see all the dragons in front of you, and it was absolutely surreal because you see it all over the telly. And then you get grilled. We got grilled for 3 hours by the dragons, but it ended up that we actually did get offered a deal from Tuka Suleiman, who's one of the dragons. So we said yes, because to us it was never about the money, it was about something that we'd achieved and completing, you know, we wanted the sound. It was all about the sound for us. It was never about making millions and millions of pounds. It was about the technology and what we could achieve. So we said yes to that. And the irony is, you know, we didn't end up going through with the deal because they wanted to mass produce it and it would have changed the quality of the sound. So we ended up not doing it in the end, which is kind of like a bit of an end to the Light Lead journey, but it allowed us to meet some incredible people with Bobby Dale from Poison. Every Rose Has Its Thorn, which was one of my favourite ever bands. We met him when we were over in California, and Stevie Wonder coming over to our booth and playing our Light Lead, being blown away. That was something special. It was just an amazing, amazing experience to do what we've done. So I've had the pleasure of working with some incredible people throughout the years. Anyone remember Tapao, Carol Decker? Honestly, and Belinda Carlisle. Honestly, I meet these people and I'm just kind of like, I grew up loving these people, you know, I'm absolutely awestruck by them, but they're just great people. So I've managed to meet some incredible people through what I do, the singing, the Light Lead, the management, And the most funny thing that I never get tongue-tied, can you tell? But the one thing that I did get tongue-tied at was I met Sting at a Pepsi chart show with Point Break, and I remember going, oh my goodness, this is Sting. And I walked over to him because I have to say hello to Sting, and so I walked up to him like this. I went, you're Sting, because he's really tall. Yeah. You're Sting. He looks down. Yeah. I went, ah. And I slunk away. I felt like an absolute, crazy one. But I met him, so that's all right, I'm fine. But he was really gorgeous. Oh, can't say anything. Hey. So I've met some amazing people. Now, I've always loved technology, even though I'm not very techie myself, but I love new things. So we've always tried to just literally do anything that's coming to us. And I never see failure as failure, it's always feedback. We learn from it as well. And I like to experiment and see if something works. So when Apple launched their iPhone back in the App Store, back in the day, we decided to do apps on the App Store, me and Dave. So we did, in July 2008, at the very start of the App Store, we developed over 30 smartphone apps right in the beginning of the day. And one of them went #1 worldwide, and people were using it everywhere. And the internet is such a powerful tool. What we have is incredible. So it allows us to get through to anyone that we possibly want to get to. If you want to get to the government, you could get through to the government if you really wanted to try. So I decided I was a big fan of laser games, and in America I used to grow up playing laser games. So I got in touch with a man called Don Bluth, because he was the cartoonist that designed Disney's Space Ace and Dragon's Lair, which were big arcade games back in the day, and I used to grow up playing them. And I wrote to him through the internet, and I didn't think I'd get a response, but I did. And I said, look, we do iPhone games. Can we please do one of your Dragon's Lair or Space Ace for the iPhone? I got an email back from him, and he said, unfortunately, Disney are actually going to be doing the Space Ace for the iPhone, but he goes, I have got another film that we're relaunching for the 30th birthday. Would you like to do that? And we were like, yeah, okay. So we ended up doing a game with Don Bluth, who was a Disney cartoonist, unflipping believable. And we had Banjo the Woodpole Cat on the iPhone back in the day. Unreal. So we did a joint venture. Another bit of technology that we experimented with, it worked out pretty well for us actually, and even better because I didn't know what the hell I was doing either, is in 2011 we heard about magic internet money, and Dave was like, hey, we can mine this magic internet money on a computer at home. Well, that magic internet money was called Bitcoin. And I don't know if anyone knows about Bitcoin, but what we were doing was mining it on our computer. And then we decided to order the proper miners from Butterfly Labs, and at the time they were worth £6 each, these Bitcoin. And we got the Butterfly Labs things, and we started mining from home. And eventually, I didn't know, when Dave left, he spent all of his, but I kept mine because I didn't know how to cash it out basically at the time, so I kind of just left it. And 10 years later, it's done all right. It's done all right. So I'm very grateful for that. And I actually do a talk on Bitcoin as well, but it's a bit more specialised. So all about blockchain technology. And if anyone wants to hear it, I don't know if we could make it somewhere. I don't know. Maybe the ship wanted to have it. So we did that. So today I own and rent out private recording space. And Ray Lewis from the Drifters recorded there for his last album. And also we're home to George Ezra's drummer. Do you know George Ezra? Yeah. He rents one of our studios as well, so that's pretty cool. And 10 years ago, I decided to become an entertainment speaker. I'm so grateful because I've travelled the world. I've met the most incredible people, which is why I love this more than anything in the world. I learned so much from people. And I've managed to travel all over to Singapore, Australia, and all the beautiful islands around there. And I'm just grateful for my life, every second of it, honestly. I really am. I'm a huge family person. They're my world. That's my son. He's 14 now, and it feels like yesterday. So he's actually on holiday with my sister and her kids at the moment, so he's fine. And that's my dog. That's my fluffy dog who I just adore. my mum and my dad, and yeah, they're my world. So over the last 10 years, this is like my 40s now, so over the last 10 years, I'm 50 in May, so I've really discovered who I am, my self-worth, and I've been following my heart. I want to spend my next 10 years doing stuff that really fulfills me, my family, and I just want to just evolve into something just even more, that I just want to be the best I can possibly be, you know, and just to help as many people as I want to. So I volunteer with Great Ormond Street Hospital. They saved my son's life when he was 1 year old, and he was in a coma for 6 weeks after an incident. So they saved his life. I do a lot of work with Great Ormond Street, and also I took the Bulgarian orphanage kids on a holiday as well, because they have really, oh, it's very sad. Basically, we took them on holiday. They don't get out very much. It was a group of English people. We took them down to this beautiful place. The second day, they wouldn't even come near us. They were very scared, especially this little boy here. Now, this little boy had been burnt head to toe with acid. They've had some seriously hard lives. All of these kids had stories to tell. There was no language between us because they were Bulgarian, and obviously the language was kindness, right? So what I wanted to do was just teach my son, who was there, just that everybody is equal, everybody's the same, and we all have kindness, and that is the most important language of everything. So I took him with me, and by day 3, that little boy who was over in the corner, and I kept going over to him to try and get him involved, and he used to be like scared, so scared. 3rd day, we were sitting down, and we were playing with that bendy wire, and I don't know if you can see it, but he made a heart. He came down, sat next to me, he made a heart, and he gave it to me. And that was one of the best things that I've ever had done for me. It was amazing. We got them all shoes and everything from Timberland. They supplied it, and this group of kids were just beautiful. There was 3 of the kids that were brothers and sisters, and their parents had been killed in front of their faces. It was just horrific. But the smiles that we got at the end, and they gave us all these painted stones at the end to say thank you. It was perfect. So I realised I really love helping people, and I wanted to learn how to do it more. I wanted to be the best version of me. So I decided to qualify as an NLP therapist. And what that is your neuro-linguistic programming, the way we think, the words that we speak, and the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, they can literally change your life. And I loved it so much that the following few years, a couple of years later, I decided to re-qualify as an NLP master practitioner, a clinical hypnotherapist, and a life coach, just so I had the tools to be able to help people amazingly, you know, and I really, really have, and especially in the pandemic, it really has helped me help a lot of people. So the things that I've learned is to be open to change. I have been with RCA, Urban Cookie Collective, an inventor and a developer, a Bitcoin miner, an NLP therapist, a life coach, and there is so much more to come because my book is not finished or written yet. So I'm constantly reinventing myself. I'm not afraid to try anything, but I'm always going to stay true to who I am and what I believe in and know my worth. So I've learned to trust my gut, go with the flow, and that the raft may overturn a couple more times, but I'm wearing my life jacket this time. So bring on the next 40 years swimming. I am definitely an optimist, someone who figures that taking a step backwards is, after taking a step forwards, it's not a disaster, it's more like a cha-cha-cha. Thank you.
That's good.
My life. Thank you so much, honestly. And if anyone has any questions, I am doing a question session tomorrow, so it'll be so good to see you there at my question session at 4:30. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me, and grab me on deck, have a chat, and thank you so much.